Summer at the Dursleys by Mastercardin42. Chapter 5. A Dame Little Whinging. Harry! Hermione's voice rang. Harry, wake up! Harry opened his eyes to see a fully dressed Hermione standing over his bed, looking excited. Harry reached for his glasses, looked confused at his chipper friend. What time is it? Harry asked. It's 6:30, and your aunt is already up and making breakfast and cleaning. Your uncle and cousin are still asleep, answered Hermione. Harry looked over his bed to see Ron still fast asleep on his camper bed, making an ugly bed face. Harry, partially annoyed and tired, grunted as he threw himself back into his bed. Gonna go back to sleep, sighed Harry. No, because we are all spending the day together. Mrs. Fig offered to give us breakfast today, and if we hurry, we can leave without dealing with your relatives, replied Hermione. Harry seemed to wake up and calm down a little when he realised that Hermione was getting at. Though he still felt frustrated when he remembered that there was very little to do in River Drive. There was very little to be done in Surrey, which compared to Diagon Alley was to Harry somewhere between a watching paint dry and history with Professor Binns. Hermione, in her eager excitement, turned to Ron, still in the camper bed. Ronald, wake up, said Hermione, shaking his head. It's not a school day, Mum, Ron replied, dazed and dreamily. Harry laughed at his friend's confusion while Hermione rolled her eyes. Ronald, it's me, Hermione, she said. Suddenly Ron's eyes went wide, and he stared up at his female friend. Despite the fact that neither Harry nor Ron was wearing anything too revealing underneath the covers, shorts and a t-shirt, Ron pulled his covers up over himself, embarrassed, looking shocked at Hermione. What are you doing here? Said Ron in a high voice. Waking you up. We're all spending the day together, said Hermione happily. Ron only grunted and rolled back into bed. We can spend the day together later. Go back to bed. Fine. Stay in bed and deal with Harry's relatives later, said Hermione with a bit of sass. Similar to Harry, Ron complied, yet did so in a disgruntled fashion. He, like an angry child, pushed his covers aside and stared at Hermione resentfully. Can you give us some privacy? Ron asked rudely. Hermione seemed less insulted by Ron's gruff, as her excitement at the prospect of spending the summer day with her closest friends was enough to overwhelm the Gryffindor girl. While Ron gave the impression of a dissatisfied child forced to go to church, Harry noted Hermione gave off the impression of a child on Christmas morning as she exited the room. Begrudgingly, Harry and Ron prepared for the day, being down in the kitchen in 10 minutes later to find Hermione trying in vain to have a conversation with Aunt Petunia, as she readied breakfast for the only people important to her in the house. Harry was surprised, as his Aunt Petunia looked to be tolerating Hermione, possibly due to her Muggle background, though she upheld her traditional attitude towards magic, replying to Hermione in strained answers. So, you and your husband met when you worked as a clerk at his firm? Asked Hermione, her last attempt at a conversation with the woman. Yes, a normal, healthy job, replied Petunia, growing annoyed. Hermione, you ready to go? Said Harry. Oh, yes, said Hermione quickly. Have a nice day, Mrs. Dursley. Where are you all going? Snapped Petunia sternly, turning away from her bowl of eggs. Hermione, Ron, the others want to see Sorry, so I'm going to show them, said Harry, tired. Seems rather inappropriate. Young adolescents running around with no supervision, sneered Petunia. Harry wanted to gag or roll his eyes, imagining the lie Dudley would tell his parents while he and his gang do as they please, a lie Petunia would gladly believe. We'll be fine, Mrs. Dursley. You may find that we're usually well behaved, answered Hermione. Petunia gave the three a glare of utter disbelief. With him? I find that hard to believe, she said, pointing a bony finger at Harry. I'll keep an eye on them, then, said Hermione, trying to hide her disgust. Don't talk to the neighbours, said Petunia firmly as the three teens left. An exasperated huff came out of Hermione as the door closed, as both Ron and Harry stared at her in confusion. Honestly, that woman, sighed Hermione. Why do I even bother? Why do you bother? Asked Ron. Hermione, some people are just not worth it. Look at Snape and Malfoy. I know, but we are staying here, and certainly there must be some good, said Hermione, not entirely convinced herself. Hermione, For once, Ron is right, Harry said, surprised at what he had just said. Ron looked triumphant and Hermione looked puzzled. It's true. Look, I've said it before, my relatives hate magic, and anything to do with it or me. They pride themselves on normality. Certainly this must be common ground. After all, they brought you in, said Hermione, still puzzled. Not one, said Harry, firmly. Hermione stopped in her tracks and looked at her feet, concern entering her eyes as she stood deep in thought. After a moment, her head rose, and she stared back at Harry. Harry simply looked back, confused. Yes, Hermione? Said Harry, trying to get her to speak. Harry, why do you live with them? She asked, choosing her words carefully. What? Asked Harry. Why did Dumbledore send you to live with them? Hermione said, the concern and curiosity in her eyes making her resemble a little sister. Why not? Why would you continue to live with them? Why not Remus, Sirius, or my family? Ron said, cutting in. Exactly, said Hermione, agreeing. Mum and Dad would love to take you in. Me, Ginny, Fred, George too. This is what I've been saying all along, said Ron, glad to be heard. Why would Dumbledore send you there, when there are dozens of other safer places? You can't tell me you haven't thought about this. Thought of why you're here? Said Hermione. Harry looked right back at both of his friends, and he knew this topic wasn't going away. Let's walk and talk, he said, sighing. The two complied, yet never looking away. Well, said Hermione, sternly. Of course I've wanted it, but I always assumed it was just commonplace, said Harry. Commonplace, sprouted Ron. How is this common practice? What do you even mean, commonplace? Ron, she's my mum's sister, and my only living relative. I just assumed that was how things work, said Harry. There is truth to that. Usually when both parents die, they go and live with their closest relative, though that doesn't explain why she's so nasty, especially towards Harry's mum, said Hermione. What do you mean, my mum? Asked Harry. Well, Hermione began, looking a little guilty. While you and Ron were getting ready, I was trying to talk to your aunt, though she appeared distant. Yeah, we noticed, said Ron. However, she got really upset when I asked about Harry's parents, and if she and your uncle were close to them. Well, she snapped and said she hadn't spoken to your mum in years, so I dropped the subject, explained Hermione. Her and my mum weren't very close, said Harry. I always thought it was just they had different personalities. The love lost between his aunt and mother was always a topic of curiosity towards Harry. While Aunt Petunia and Uncle Vernon had cruelly told Harry his parents were layabout drunks who died in a car crash, everyone else who knew his folks, excluding Snape, had nothing but good things to say about the late Potters. Although Harry had abandoned any chance of there being any positive relation between himself and his relatives. Still, it doesn't explain why, after what your mum did, she'd treat you like this, said Hermione sympathetically. I'll say it again, said Harry, growing annoyed that he'd have to repeat this fact. They don't like magic. In fact, they downright hate it. That's just how it is. What about Mrs. Fig? Why have her stationed here? Said Ron. Harry had forgotten about the bitterness he felt towards learning Dumbledore had a spy living in Little Whinging, keeping an eye on him, yet doing absolutely nothing to interfere with the mistreatment and neglect he had suffered. However, wanting to keep face with Ron and Hermione, Harry pushed those feelings down. Seems like he wanted to make sure none of Voldemort's supporters went after me, replied Harry. You said it yourself, Hermione. It's common for orphans to live with their closest living relative. Look at Neville. The moment the words left Harry's mouth, he regretted it. He hated himself in that moment for his carelessness and stupidity in mentioning Neville's parents, even if it was accidental and not too revealing. He froze and looked away from Ron and Hermione, hoping they'd ignore this comment and move past it. However, out of cruel fate, Ron opened his mouth and asked, Whatever happened to Neville's parents? Harry's heart skipped a beat, though neither Harry nor Hermione noticed. Though neither Ron nor Hermione noticed it. I asked my mum once, when I was starting at Hogwarts, why Neville lived with his gran. She snapped at me and told me not to drop it, said Ron. Maybe she's right. It's none of our business, replied Harry, trying to change the subject. Yeah, but... Hermione stopped Ron. Harry's right. It's not our place, said Hermione, giving Harry a quick stare like she was aware he knew more. In no time they were at Mrs. Figg's house. It seemed, and like yesterday, they were greeted by an excited Mrs. Figg, and equally excited Neville at the door. Mrs. Figg had prepared a lovely breakfast for her special guests. While not as delectable as Mrs. Weasley's cooking, it was still a better gesture than Aunt Petunia gave Harry. While Hermione went to phone her parents, Harry and Ron talked with Neville, who, for a moment, embodied Mr. Weasley's love of everything Muggle, with his wonder about the Muggle world. Soon Ginny joined them, ready for the day, looking quite positive, and even a little lovely to Harry. You seem better today. What happened to that growling monster I see every morning? Said Ron, insensitively. I'll show you a growling monster, prat, replied an angry Ginny, losing a bit of her positivity. Sensing an argument, Harry intervened. Ron, get along with your sister. Ginny smiled at him while Ron, incensed, was just joking, like Fred and George at home. Well, the difference is, Fred and George are actually funny, retorted Ginny, which reminds me, Mum wants us to call her. Us, said Harry. Yes, us, as in you, Ron, and me, Ginny answered, gesturing to Harry. Soon after Hermione was done speaking with her parents, she gave the phone to Ron. After 2 failed attempts to properly dial the number, Harry had to step in and dial the number for him, and had to explain how waiting for an answer worked. Finally, after a few instructions, Ron, followed by Ginny, spent 10 minutes talking with their mother, though the conversation seemed more like Ron and Ginny telling their mother they were fine. Here, said a tired Ginny, handing off to Harry. She wants to talk to you. Hello? Harry said into the phone. Harry, dear, beamed Mrs. Weasley. How are you? Your relatives treating you all right? As well as they can, replied Harry. How are things at the Burrow? Perfect, said Mrs. Weasley, unconvincingly, still hurt by Percy's disowning of the family. I'm just glad Ron and Ginny are there to take care of you. They're pretty helpful. Has Dumbledore or anyone said anything about Voldemort? Don't say that name, said Mrs. Weasley sternly. Sorry, have you heard anything about you-know-who? Harry asked again. You shouldn't concern yourself with that, Harry. After what you've been through, you should relax and rest, replied Mrs. Weasley, motherly. While Harry was annoyed at being babied, he at least had the comfort that someone would act motherly to him. I'll try. Good. Now, Arthur and I are sending a few things over for Ron and Ginny this afternoon. Is there anything you need? Asked Mrs. Weasley. No, but thanks anyway, replied Harry, knowing full well Ron would have asked for extra food already. I don't know if you're talking to him is a good idea, argued Mrs. Weasley, clearly talking to someone else on the other end. Harry, there's someone here who'd like to speak with you. Okay. Thanks so much, Mrs. Weasley. Take care, said Harry. Same to you, dear, said Mrs. Weasley, handing the phone off. How did Lily work this thing? Said Sirius, to Harry's great surprise. Sirius! Said Harry excitedly. How are you here? Why are you at the Burrow? Questions for another day. I just wanted to make sure you're okay, replied Sirius fondly. Yeah, as well as ever, said Harry. How are those relatives treating you? Asked Sirius, a coldness in his voice. The usual, ignoring me, which I prefer, answered Harry honestly. I could stop by and teach them a lesson. Harry heard a muffled sound from the other end, as if someone shouted something. Relax, Remus, I was only joking. Though Harry did detect a seriousness in his godfather's tone at the threat to the Dursleys. Remus is there too? Asked Harry. Yeah, Molly and Arthur asked us over for breakfast. Would you like to say hi? Offered Sirius. No, I might be leaving soon, said Harry. All right then. Take care and watch your friends, said Sirius. I'll tell him. Just relax. Remus, Arthur and Molly said goodbye. Tell them the same. Goodbye, Sirius, said Harry, smiling. Bye, kiddo, said Sirius as he hung up the phone. Harry returned to the kitchen, where everyone had already finished their breakfasts. Did you know Sirius and Remus are at the Burrow? He said. What? Ron said, surprised. Why would they be there? I don't know. That's why I'm asking, said Harry. Sirius said your folks invited them over for breakfast, but I don't think they were close. Still can't believe he's innocent, said Neville. Harry turned to his friend. At first he was scared, realising he had just blurted out Sirius to Neville. Yet his friend's comment eased his worry. You know? Asked Harry. Dumbledore told Gran. Still surprised, though, considering it was Dumbledore himself who told her, and considering Gran trusts him with her life. I believe it, replied Neville. But why was he and Professor Lupin at the Burrow? Asked Ginny, joining in. We can talk outside. Right now we have a bus to catch, said Hermione. Like the night bus? Asked Neville. Yes, only this one leaves in 20 minutes, replied Hermione. By Hermione's push, the 5 of them were out of the door and waving goodbye to Mrs. Figg, hurriedly walking to the nearby bus stop. They continued their discussion on Sirius and Lupin's arrival at the Burrow, none of them convinced it was simply due to kindly being invited over for breakfast. Do you think it's anything to do with Voldemort? Said Ginny in a hushed whisper at Voldemort's name. Could be. At the end of the 3rd task, Dumbledore asked Sirius to round up the old crowd. He said names like Remus, Mrs. Figg, and someone named Mundungus Fletcher, said Harry. I've heard of him, said Ron. Mundungus Fletcher, he's a crook. Dad had to arrest him a few times. But why would Dumbledore want him? And who is this old crowd? Said Hermione, annoyed that there was a question she couldn't solve. It definitely has something to do with Voldemort. There's no other explanation, said Harry firmly. That, I think we can agree on, said Hermione. I could ask my Gran. She's known Dumbledore for quite some time. Maybe she knows what this is, said Neville. That would be brilliant, said Harry. She's been asking me to write to her anyway. Finally found a reason to, said Neville as the bus to the village in Little Whinging approached. As they got on and sat down, Ginny looked to Ron. Almost forgot. Ginny took out a collection of papers and a pen and handed them to Ron. What's this for? He asked. Dad wants us to take notes on the Muggle world, replied Ginny. This should be fun, said Ron, holding up the notepad. Ron, Ginny and Neville sat with wide smiles around their faces, giddy at the idea of going to a Muggle environment. Hermione found great humour in her friend's expressions, reminding her of her and Harry's first entrance into the wizarding world. While his friends were distracted, Harry noticed some eyes laying upon him in suspicion and disdain. No doubt these were residents of Privet Drive, neighbours of the Dursleys, having been told that Harry went to a school for criminal boys. Luckily, his friends never seemed to notice. Little Whinging, to Harry at least, was a town which embodied the ideals and image of the Dursleys conveyed, or thought they conveyed. Decent houses, a village, a shopping mall, and a library, none of which the Dursleys actually visited. Hermione was determined to see it all. Where would you all like to go first? Asked Hermione to the group. The bus can stop at either the village or the shopping mall. What's a shopping mall? Asked Ginny. It's sort of like Diagon Alley, only indoors, explained Hermione. A mall has shops, a food court, and much more. I wouldn't mind going to a mall. Rarely been there, said Harry. But you live here, said Hermione. Never had the time, lied Harry. In truth, while Uncle Vernon and Petunia had taken Dudley shopping many times, they only ever brought Harry once. The only time they did bring him was when he was 8, and they forced him to stay in the car. If Harry and Hermione want to go, I'm fine with this mall thing, said Neville. Yeah, an indoor Diagon Alley sounds like fun, agreed Ginny. You said there's a food court. I'm in, said Ron. Perfect, beamed Hermione. The mall is the next stop anyway. Me and Harry have money for food and everything else you're interested. How did you get money? Asked Ron. Gringotts has a machine that converts galleons into Muggle pounds. Hermione and I took some before returning, replied Harry. We don't need the money, Harry, assured Ginny. It's fine. Besides, it's just food, said Harry. Finally, the bus stopped in front of a large shopping centre. When the 5 teens got out, Ron, Ginny and Neville stood staring, awestruck at them all, their mouths hanging wide open as if looking at a miracle firsthand. Both Harry and Hermione couldn't help but giggle at this reaction. It's so big, said Ron. Hermione smiled. Thanks for the ride, sir, she said to the bus driver. Keep an eye on that one, the driver said warningly, pointing a stubby finger at Harry, a gesture he noticed. He's trouble, that one. After the door closed and the bus drove away, Hermione turned to Harry, a confused, stunned, and concerned look in her eyes, a look Harry knew all too well. What was that about? She asked. Nothing too important, Harry replied, though knowing Hermione, he knew this topic would come up again. Do you guys want to go inside or continue looking at it? Ron, Ginny, and Neville snapped out of their trance and followed Harry into the mall. Once inside, Harry found that his magical friends had begun to embody him when he had first entered Diagon Alley, completely mesmerised and wonderstruck by this new world. Well, which store first, then? Asked Hermione. There should be a directory somewhere. Ah, there it is. Hermione approached the map of the mall, her finger glossing through the contents. Ginny, why don't you and I spend some time looking at clothes, while the boys spend some time together? You're not coming with us, said Ron. Ginny's going with you, Harry said, surprised by what he said. Yes, we'll meet back at the food court at noon, said Hermione, looking at both Harry and Ron. Don't worry, we'll be fine, and we have an entire month to spend together, said Ginny, looking at Harry. Ginny's right. See you then, boys, said Hermione, taking Ginny's hand. See you then, said Harry, watching the two girls go off. Line break. Hermione had brought Ginny to a large department store called Henderson, which unknown to her was a frequent shop of Harry's Aunt Petunia. Ginny had been strangely quiet as they walked over, and even as Hermione looked through new skirts, the youngest Weasley seemed distant and even a bit embarrassed. And Hermione, being the clever witch she was, had a hunch what was troubling the redhead. So, said Hermione, casting a suspicious eye over at Ginny. How was your nighttime walk with Harry? Nothing special, replied Ginny, a little defensive. He just brought me back to Mrs. Figg's. We just talked. You and Harry talked? Talked about what? Continued Hermione, sounding like her gossiping friends Lavender and Parvati. Ginny looked embarrassed. Things. We talked about things. Percy, Quidditch, Michael. You told him about Michael? You willingly told him about Michael. You didn't even tell your family about him. You only told me, and I had to force it out of you, said Hermione, stunned. It just came out. It's not really a big deal, said Ginny, trying to come across as casual. How are things with Michael? Asked Hermione sympathetically. Not good, replied Ginny, though Hermione could detect there was no upset in her tone. It's partially over between us. Partially over? Well, we never officially broke up. He did try to make amends, though it came off as him being an arse. Told me to contact him if Harry tries to hurt me. Hermione grunted. Why would Harry ever hurt any one of us? I know. He even sent me a letter last night apologising, but he still said he thought Harry would try something. Take advantage of me in some way. Ginny looked down at her feet. It doesn't matter anyway. You said it yourself. I should move on. Well, he did look upset when we went off, said Hermione questioningly. So did Ron. It was now Ginny's turn to give Hermione a suspicious eye. Hermione blushed scarlet. Yes, well, your brother is always upset. That's true, but not in the way he was looking at you. How are things with Vicky? Who's Vicky? It didn't take long for Hermione to realise what she was talking about. She looked upset at the mention of the word. Is that what Ron thinks I call Crumb? Vicky? Do you? No, in fact I haven't spoken to Victor since the end of term. I was supposed to write to him, but with all this, I got sidetracked, answered Hermione. To be honest, I don't know if there's any future there. Thousands of girls would kill to date Victor Crumb. And you get the golden chance. And you don't see a future? Said Ginny, impressed. This is why I love talking to you, Hermione. Unlike Lavender and Parvati, I think there's more to a relationship than being a Quidditch star, said Hermione defensively. So, is there a future with my brother? Said Ginny cheekily. If your brother has any feelings for me, he should come out and say it, said Hermione firmly. Ron was never the best at showing or sharing his feelings, replied Ginny. That's true, said Hermione, pulling out a lovely summer dress. This would look good on you. Ginny laughed. Never really been the dress type. Harry might like it, replied Hermione. Ginny laughed. Through the corner of her eye, Hermione could see that Ginny was now eyeing the dress with a newfound interest. Line break. Harry had never been more amused in his whole life. Even the time when Dudley accidentally got his head stuck in the stair railing didn't compare to watch Ron and Neville explore a Muggle mall. His two friends acted like children at a museum, staring at the different shops and stores with a foreign expression. At some points they caught the puzzled looks of other patrons, confused as to why boys were acting like this. Harry had to wave a few off. "So how does football work?" asked Ron to the clerk of a sports store. "How does football work?" the clerk repeated, looking at Ron as if he was making fun of him. "Think you're being funny?" "No, I'm not from here," replied Ron honestly. "Do you kick the ball?" The clerk stared at Ron, perplexed as to what he was asking. "Okay, Ron, time to go," said Harry, hurrying his friends out. "But I still want to know how football works," argued Ron. "I'll tell you how it works later," said Harry. "Thanks, sir. Sorry for the trouble." "Kids think they're being funny. Like I don't have enough on my plate already," mumbled the clerk under his breath. "Come on, guys," said Harry to Ron and Neville. "We have to meet the girls in the food court." "About time," said Ron excitedly. "I'm starving." "You're always starving," joked Neville. Harry smiled at his friend's comment. It wasn't like Neville to joke, yet it was a completely welcomed surprise. Since coming here, Neville had let loose, as they say, and was now acting less like the insecure boy at Hogwarts who always lost his toad Trevor, and more like Ron or Harry. Maybe this was the reason Dumbledore had him come, thought Harry. Ron's eyes lit up when they came across the food court. Rows upon rows of food stores with scents of grilled burgers and fries in the air, and Ron for a moment felt like he was smelling his mother's cooking. "You okay, Ron?" asked Harry. "Diagon Alley could use this," said Ron, his mouth watering. "Hey, boys," said Hermione, joining them. "How was your day so far?" "Enlightening," Harry joked. "What have you had there?" Harry was pointing at the bag Ginny was holding. "Nothing too special." "So what is there to eat?" replied Ginny, changing the topic. "I'll take a salad. Ron, Ginny and Neville, what would you like? Mine and Harry's treat," said Hermione. "Why don't you surprise us?" said Ginny, the others agreeing. Harry and Hermione had decided to buy an entire pizza for the group, thinking it should be enough for everyone, even with Ron's stomach. However, when they found a table, Harry saw something shocking. Something he thought he'd never see. For the first time, Hermione was eating before Ron, who, along with Ginny and Neville, was staring at the pizza. "What is it?" asked Ron. "A pizza," replied Harry, taking a bite of his slice. "It's food. You eat it." "Not like any food I've ever seen," said Neville. "Try it. You'll like it," insisted Hermione. Bravely, but with caution, Ron picked up a slice and moved it slowly towards his mouth. He opened it and nervously took a bite. Suddenly, he looked surprised and a wide grin formed over his face. Ron looked like he was in heaven, taking every bite of his new favourite food. "I take it you like it," said Harry. "This is unbelievable," said Ron, amazed. Soon Ginny and Neville were eating too, and enjoying the pizza as much as Ron was. Hermione was impressed, while Harry looked on the verge of laughter. However, something soon killed his mood. Looking over his shoulder, he saw a familiar face looking back at him. Malcolm, one of Dudley's friends/thugs, had spotted Harry and was glaring at him. Malcolm looked at Harry with his usual disgust. Yet when he saw his friends, he looked confused. Why would a loser criminal like Harry Potter be around friends? Harry thought he must be thinking. Luckily for Harry, he didn't approach them until Hermione got up. "I need to get more napkins. Be right back," said Hermione with a smile. As Hermione approached the napkins, Malcolm approached her. "Hello," he said pleasantly. "Hi there," she replied. "So you know Harry Potter?" Malcolm said. "Why, yes, I do. Do you know him?" said Hermione. "I'm mates with Dudley. Malcolm Radis," he said, reaching a hand to shake Hermione. "Nice to meet you. Hermione Granger. I'm friends with Harry. Would you like to say hi to Harry?" offered Hermione. "No, thanks," Malcolm said immediately. "Why are you friends with him?" "Excuse me?" "Why are you friends with him? You do know what he is, right? Where he goes to school," said Malcolm. "Where do you think he goes to school?" asked Hermione, worried. "St. Brutus's School for Incurably Criminal Boys." Hermione's eyes widened in his response. "Goodness, he didn't lie to you about where he goes, did he? I'll set him straight if you want." "No, that's fine. He doesn't go to that school. He goes to a school up north with me, replied Hermione firmly. That's not what his aunt and uncle said. Poor thing's putting up with him, said Malcolm. Hey, can I buy you a drink? Hermione, you okay? Asked Harry from behind her. Oh, yes, just chatting with one of your cousin's friends, replied Hermione. Potter, sneered Malcolm. Hello, Malcolm, said Harry. Dudley with you? No, I'm off to meet him. Just talking with your friends. Didn't think you had friends, replied Malcolm, his pleasant tone gone. Hermione, why don't you come back and join us? Asked Harry. Good idea, said Hermione. Nice to meet you, Malcolm. The pleasure is all mine, said Malcolm in false niceties. As Harry and Hermione walked back, Harry could see Malcolm glaring at him and checking Hermione out. Harry didn't know which look disgusted him more. Throughout the remainder of the day, Hermione would give Harry a thoughtful and knowing glances, aware that something wasn't entirely all right. Finally, they had enough at the mall. Hermione stopped Harry at the foot of the entrance. Harry could tell what she was about to say and was ready. Hermione, I know what you're about to say, and it's far... Before he could finish, she interrupted. Don't you dare say you're fine, Harry Potter! Hermione snapped. What was that about? St. Brutus's? It's not a big deal. It's just what my relatives told people I go to, that's all, replied Harry. That's all? A school for criminal boys? My parents tell everyone I go to a school up north, not a school for criminals, Hermione retorted, scandalised. Why would they say that? They probably want to make Dudley's school look better, or something like that, said Harry, just wanting this conversation to end. But why throw you under the bus for Dudley? Why treat you like this? Why leave you here? Hermione was pacing, breathing heavily with hot red rage. It's just... Why? Hermione, look at me. I'm okay with it. Can you just drop it? No, I will not drop it, she said firmly. Are you guys coming or not? Asked Ron, peering from the door. Harry looked at Hermione right in the eye, and he knew she would not let this go. The same determination with SPEW and Rita Skeeter was behind her eyes. Come hell or high water, rain or snow, whatever obstacle was put in her way, she was dead set on righting this wrong. Harry sighed, knowing this wasn't the end, and in a defeated breath moved forward. You coming, Hermione? He asked. Yes, replied Hermione, stiffly. Despite the arrival of Malcolm and the reveal of St. Brutus's, for once Harry was excited for the summer holiday. He spent the day with his closest friends, and was now looking at the mundane little whinging in a new light. Whenever Harry was forced to return to the dull and damp Privet Drive, he had thoughts of loneliness, isolation, and other unhappinesses. Yet now, he was happy to be back. Any dark memory was eclipsed by Ron trying pizza for the first time, by Hermione trying to get along with his Aunt Petunia, and by Ginny walking alongside him. Maybe this won't be so bad, Harry said to himself, for once not caring that it was out loud. End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that, because I certainly did. Ooh, Hermione's on the warpath, and a little bit of girl talk between her and Ginny. We do get hints and confirmation that they did it behind the boys' backs, but it's nice to see it from their perspective. Also, Malcolm, you don't know what you're getting yourself into. Hermione's not a girl you can ogle at. So let's see how this turns out, shall we? You guys know the drill. Remember to like, comment and subscribe, and hit that bell to get notified whenever I upload a new video. Have a good day, night, or whatever time zone you're in. Bye my guys, gals and non-binary pals. I'll see you in another video. And to quote Lee Jordan again, keep each other safe and keep faith. Bye!